Anyways, typically what we do here is just to introduce the elected officials that are here today. There's no, everybody's, all the council, whoever is invited, they can come, but obviously people have other commitments and things like that, so there's no rhyme or reason as to who's here and who's not. But I know Phil Curran is here, a member of our Common Council. Mary Teichelt's here, she's also a member of our Common Council, and we thank them for coming out tonight. Mike McLaughlin, who is the Chief of Staff to my office, and Ted Kasampis, who works to liaison the complaints. So typically when you call my office, at some point you get a hold of Ted if you're not using the 311 line, and then we go ahead and try to solve your problem. So we want to thank them again for being here and appreciate their time. Generally what we try to do is just give you a sense of overview of some of the things, issues that we're working on, and then we just throw it open to questions. People have questions, comments, concerns, criticism, we take it all. Don't necessarily have all the answers tonight, but we try to track down an answer for you eventually, and go from there. So what's happening? Well, we just finished completing our budget. That was done in May. Our capital budget was completed in June. And so the projects that are in there are going onward and they're moving forward. I have to tell you, I'm obviously very concerned about the economy. I think we all are, between gas, energy, all the things that are happening. And so we've been very careful on the city side to monitoring our spending. One of the things we did is effective April 15th is we put a spending freeze on, we put a hiring freeze on. We also have an internal business audit committee that's going through all 33 departments, meeting with the department heads, looking at how they budget, what they use their dollars for. Is there any chance for savings, combining resources? We set a goal of eliminating about 10% of the workforce, both citywide. We've already eliminated approximately 6 positions, I think it's 4 or 5, maybe 6, on the city side through attrition. We're not laying anybody off, but when people retire, we try to reorganize and divvy up those duties amongst other people. And the school system also, I think the Reading Leaders, which was a program that we had funded by the state didn't fund it, so they took those teachers and then backfilled the retirements. Although I still think there's 4 or 5 teachers that have not been placed yet. There's about, the net is a saving about 20, 25 positions on the school side. The number one expenditure we have, no question about it, is staff and personnel. And this organization, aside from energy, it's benefits, insurance, healthcare, salaries, benefits, all that stuff. That really drives a lot of the budget. So the more we can combine, the more we can become more efficient, the more money we'll save doing that. And so we're also looking at some little things that have always been pet peeves of mine, but we're working on them. One is use of city vehicles. Who needs them? Why are they assigned a vehicle? Is there a way we can do it with a pool? We did set up a pool several years ago where people sign out a vehicle. And so we're looking to make sure that the people that have a vehicle assigned to them are actually need the vehicle and are using it for its intended purposes. The other thing, believe it or not, is cell phones. We get what I call cell phone creep. It means that one person gets a cell phone in the department and then the next person can't talk to that person on the Direct Connect Nextel without their own, I think it's Sprint now, right? Without their own Sprint Nextel phone. So now they got to go get one so they can talk together. And pretty soon the whole department, they all have cell phones. Well, all those add up. They cost money to our plan. And they also use the data feature. They use the text messaging. And that also costs money, and oftentimes they're over their limits and over their minutes. So we're looking at reapportioning how people use those phones, making sure they're paying personally for their personal calls, and that kind of stuff. So those things we're looking at as well. Big picture-wise, we've been talking to the Board of Ed about looking at combining some services over the long term. For example, we ought to have a unified purchasing structure where we do all the purchasing through one office, all the bidding's done through one office. Again, try to maximize our return. For example, if the city's buying paper and the school system's buying paper, it's kind of silly to have 2 bids for paper out there. We ought to put one big bid. And again, you're not going to save $1 million, but you know, 10,000 here, 20,000 here, it soon starts to add up into significant savings. Same thing with information technology. For years, I've been asking the board to look at combining 2 IT departments. It's silly to have the city buying one kind of computer, the Board of Ed buying another kind of computer. We should be on the same lease. We should look at the infrastructure, be on the same servers, so that we can get maximum. So those are the kinds of things long-term that we're working on to save money, both in this operating budget and in the next budget coming up. So in terms of that, things are moving forward. We just had a successful run with the Connecticut Film Festival. If any of you had to go there, it was kind of cool. Palace was open. It was really neat to see that facility open again. And we're having the Nutmeg Games, which will be July 26th through August 3rd. That has about 4,000 to 5,000 athletes participating. They bring their parents, so there's going to be activities all up and down Main Street, on our fields. They have an Olympic-style game. We actually have a grand opening at Danbury High School field where they come in. I'm going to bring the torch for the last half mile if I don't die, running that in. If anybody knows CPR, if you could be handy, that'd be appreciated. And then we light a torch in the whole bed, so it's kind of neat. And if you're around town, you might want to check out some of the events and things like that. And so that should be a big event for the city. We're also working on developing the city economically. We continue to be in long-term discussions with several major corporations. I can't tell you who they are. I can tell you those things are looking rather positive, but that could change tomorrow, just the way that the nature of the culture of those groups work. But I'm feeling pretty optimistic about our ability to recruit business and retain business within the city. So we're kind of excited about that. We're having a great year crime, knock on wood. Of course, I say that. Tomorrow we have a major event, but in general, in spite of the high-profile things you see, statistically speaking, we're doing very well. We routinely have one of the lowest crime rates, if not the lowest crime rate in the state. Our unemployment rate still is outpacing the rest of the state in terms of being low. So economically, we're doing well locally, but the national situation is causing a lot of stress on everybody. So those are all good signs for us here locally. Housing prices. First quarter of 08, we just finished an analysis. I know you're not going to believe this, but it's true. In Danbury, single-family homes rose 3%. The price of them actually went up. Now, you hear about prices dropping and collapsing. We're not seeing that here in Danbury. That may be true in California, Florida, Nevada, Arizona, all those other places, and it is true. It's happening. But locally, we haven't seen that happen yet. We do see a slight reduction in condominiums and in apartments, 4 or 5 apartments in a home like that. But in general, single-family homes have pretty much held their value, which is a good thing long run. It's a bad thing short run, good thing long run. I know that. And so that's pretty much the state of the city and state of the economy in about 5 seconds. So with that, if you have questions and concerns, I know you didn't come out here in the rain. Maybe you did, but what do you have? Anybody want to throw something for discussion in general? Anybody have a particular issue? Lynn, you're always good at bringing something up. Sit down.
After the rainstorm 2 years ago, from what I understand, that area down on Main Street near the beautiful park that you put in, it was under almost 3 feet of water. And cars were driving over some of the grass to try not to get stuck in the heavy-duty water. Where, a year ago, I believe, you started the drainage plan. Where is it? Have you heard anything? What's going on? And when do you fix that?
Yeah, well, we are plugging away at the drainage plan. I don't know the exact status. I'm going to have to talk to Antonio. And when we get 2 or 3 inches, in that case it's about 2 inches of rain in an hour and a half to 2 hours, the city has a hard time handling that kind of deluge. It's difficult to be able to manage that. And drainage is an issue not just in that area, it's an issue throughout the city. We've done a lot of good work throughout the city in hitting a lot of the high-profile areas. That area is really connected to, Lynn knows the history here, the East Ditch. I have a speech from the mayor of Danbury in 1889 who spoke about fixing the drainage problem at the East Ditch. We have made some progress over the years, not as much as we want. It's a big ticket item. It's several $1 million to correct, if not more. So we've been trying to break it into phases. Do a little phase here, clean that out, do the next phase, add a bigger pipe. I'm not sure where they are, but I'll check for you.
I hate to see that beautiful park.
Yeah.
Grow that money, get
I
rid of
agree.
it.
And why do people try to drive through the water when it's like 4 feet high? It's a problem. So, good. But we're working on it. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the security of the schools.
Yep.
And what's going to be done about it, and what action plans are in place, or going to be in place?
The question was, what's the status of security of the schools? What's the action plan? And what are we doing about it? There's a number of things we're doing. One, and really, let me just kind of take a step back and say one of the issues we had was here at King Street, as it related to, and we have a pretty good beat on who we think we know who did it, and they were somebody that had access to the building. So whatever security plan we had in place wouldn't have mattered because they had access to the building. So that's one thing to understand that. But there is a larger question about are we secure? And one of the things that we are doing is we're installing cameras throughout the city. We're also putting in the swipe card system for the staff, where you hit the little swipe thing, pops the door, and you go in to try to restrict some of the access to the building. The high school's already got their cameras installed. They have to order some servers and some equipment. They're doing that now. The cafeteria, for example, and I have to tell you, the incident with the bomb was, terrifying for everybody. It was horrible. But what I really worry about is, God forbid, some kind of incident at the high school. Not a bombing, well, maybe with a bomb, I don't know. But the point is, we got a lot of kids there in one area. So, for example, a camera isn't going to stop them, but it's going to help us recreate what happened leading up to that. We also mounted cameras on the outside of the building as well to be able to know who's coming in, coming out, particularly around the exits and entrance. Each building is reviewing their own security plans, whether it be a lockdown plan, if there's something going active problem in the building, be it an employee or with a child. In addition to that, we're also looking at wiring up all the elementary schools will be wired. In fact, this building, we're doing that. We're going to accelerate that now, hopefully finish all of that this summer for the opening of the school
Well, a
year.
suggestion also would be to have drills. And have the children drill. I'm a teacher in another state, and our kids actively drill lockdowns, emergency evacuations, and the kids, from my understanding, had no clue of what to do in the situation.
Yeah. I can't speak what school that is. I can tell you the high school, I know drills. We drill 3 or 4 times a year. In fact, we just had one last week, and we had one in the fall. We do 2 kinds of drills. We do the lockdown drill. There's a special code that goes through the speaker system. I know what it is. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Teachers know to keep their kids in the room. It's sort of a routine message that teachers will listen for. They drill that a lot. And then there's the evacuation drill for fire or that kind of incident. In the case of the bomb threats, what it showed is that we did a really good job at moving the high school kids around. Now, it's not perfect. Parents aren't going to be able to pick up their kid at the front gate and have us load them in, because our #1 focus is the child. It's not the parent. You're safe. You're in your car outside on Beckerly Street. No offense, but we care about the child in the building. I had somebody call me up and was yelling because we wouldn't let their child go from East Bay Gate through the school because they were parked on Beckerly and they didn't want to drive all the way up around. She was screaming at me. And I go, look, I don't care about your problem. I care about your child, and I'm not going to let your daughter walk through the building while we're looking for a bomb. I'm just not going to do it. So in that case, the high school worked flawlessly. If there are other buildings that haven't drilled, then that's something that the superintendent is going to certainly, I'm sure, going to impress upon them the importance of that. We are going to meet with all the principals 2 days before school opening in the fall to emphasize the importance of the fire drills and making sure that they're cognizant of what the evacuation plan is and that they actually practice it once in a while. Now, our fire marshal does go to every building.
Well, I'm not talking about just fire, though. I'm actually talking about a bomb scare, going to a separate location
Right.
and having an early dismissal where the kids practice it, especially kindergarten through 5th grade.
Yeah. That's something we can do. One of the things that we did discuss during the debrief about all that issue was that parochial schools, we need to keep them better in the loop. We had to make phone calls to all the principals individually and explain what was going on. They were great, super cooperative, but they hadn't designated an emergency person in the room that the city can talk to when there's a broad system-wide issue. So communication amongst those folks has to be improved on, and we're working on that. But I'm going to tell you, we moved about 10,000 kids in about, 2 hours, hour and a half or so. A pretty good job, all things considered. All things considered. There are things that can always be improved on. War Memorial was one of those things that we can improve on. But I went down there 4:15 or so. Nobody was left. There was maybe, I think, right, Michael, when you down there that late, it was 4:15 or so, and there was not there. But look, we can always get better at it. It's something that we're always going to, have to be vigilant about. Unfortunately, today's day and age. Yes, ma'am.
I think that the evacuation went very well. My kids go to this school, but my question is, we were told by the Board of Education that King Street Intermediate, because of the way we were set up, was first on the list to have the cameras and the buzzing system installed, and that it was going to be complete by the time we got back from Christmas vacation. And it wasn't. And we were told by the assistant superintendents that the reason was some type of incompatibility with the Honeywell system. Why one has anything to do with the other, I'm not sure, but how did the compatibility issue get solved within 4 days of the bomb threat? And why did we not have the cameras installed in the beginning of the year as
Yeah.
we were promised?
I don't know. I'd have to check with the Board of Ed about that. I haven't heard about a compatibility issue. We've been.
Well, there obviously isn't one. It couldn't have been solved in, 72 hours.
Well, they might have solved it in the 4 months since Christmas, though. I mean, we were always moving forward to putting these cameras in. That much I know because I inquired about them, because we funded them. And so as far as there was a compatibility issue, I'd have to check on that. I don't know, and I'm going to guess that they probably have resolved it. I don't think they did it in 4 days. I think they've been working on it for months. Again, in this case, without telling you too much, I don't think cameras would have solved this issue, unfortunately. Now, that doesn't mean it won't help in another system, even for vandalism, which is a perennial problem in some of our buildings. Cameras definitely help in that, and for peace of mind. Yes, ma'am.
My children go to school on the King Street Primary, and that's part of the problem, I think. I thought the evacuation was handled wonderfully, the Honeywell system failed yet again, but thank God.
That's not me, by the way. When you get the Honeywell call, that's not the city's call-out system.
I know, I'm just venting.
Okay,
because
no, just so you know.
The reason I'm venting is because I emailed the PTO and asked for a PTO meeting in June, and I was told that it wasn't any of the PTO's business, and from the new president, and then the principal from ASB called me, and she told me the same thing, don't worry, we're handling it, and they sent home a very curt letter saying, yes, this was found, everything was handled well, we will investigate it, blah, blah, blah. Security systems will be in 10 days, which they were, and this principal never called me, never called me back. They never had a PTO meeting. There was no forum for parents to get any information. And all the information I got on that was from the newspaper.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea that it was from an employee.
Well, please don't repeat that. I'm not saying that's the case.
It was from an employee.
Speculation, a lot of speculation. Yes, please.
Well, I had no idea that, I didn't know, kids went back to school the next day, and there was no other mention of it, not even in the newspaper. So here I'm sitting here, and I'm like, I know they found something. The last I read in the paper, they sent it out for an evaluation to see what exactly it was. Never heard what it was.
Right.
And things just continued on, and I'm hearing that kids were told, especially in this school, because they're old enough to question what happened. And I know my son knew what happened, and nobody ever discussed it here. And I couldn't give him any more information than what he could read in the newspaper. I just felt like the parent community of King Street was kind of just brushed off.
And actually now, I'm going to just chime in, to hear
Please,
that
please.
it could potentially be an inside job as a parent is even more frightening.
Yeah.
I don't know other people.
Well,
But
let
I
me-
mean, these are the people that.
The Board of Education that you're complaining to?
Yeah,
But they won't talk.
let me just,
One at a time.
one at a time, let me just take a step back. Look, it has nothing to do with any current employee, okay? So just so I just want to be clear about that, okay? There are a lot of different suspects in this particular case. We don't think at this point that the two issues were related, but we're not sure. I mean, there's still a lot of things that we're working on. The robbery and the bank robbery and this issue here. But, so getting back to that, and your point was that, look, the principal here, superintendent, Board of Ed, have to communicate better with you, even if it's a debrief a couple of weeks after to say, hey, look.
All we want is for them to say, listen, we're taking care of it, just in person, face to face, have the opportunity to sit at this table and have somebody stand there and tell me.
That's a good point. And I can talk to the superintendent, and we can, maybe prior to going back in the fall, have some kind of meeting like that. I'll definitely talk to him and kind of brief everybody where we are.
Right.
What's that?
That's the reason many of us are here right
Yeah,
now.
no,
There's
I-
no other voice. There's parents
Yeah.
here right now that don't even have children in the school yet, but they're very concerned about sending them
Yeah.
and what goes on here.
Right. Well, I think communication is key. I'm going to tell you that, unfortunately, I'm not going to suggest that this isn't a serious incident. It is. Fortunately for us, everything worked pretty well, but we're very proud of our schools. Our schools are very safe. This is a great school, and if we need to communicate, I'm going to relay that to the superintendent and have him talk to the principal, and I'm going to ask that they have some kind of pre-opening meeting just with the parents, talk a little bit about safety and security up here and about some of the steps we've taken over the summer. I think that's a good way to start the new school year. No question about that. Yes.
On the same lines, and talking about communication and drills and that sort of thing and what the plans are, part of the issue I had, and I thought the evacuation was handled very well, my son's at KSP, and I couldn't have asked for it to be handled any better on his end. On my end, it was very confusing to get a call saying, go to the firehouse. But if the bus has already come, then you're going to have to go and meet the bus. And then if you miss the bus, you're going to go someplace else. Where it seems that if there were these plans in place, which the principal has said there were, as parents, if we had known what the plans were, we could have been better able to cope with it instead of getting an emergency phone call,
Yeah.
rushing, not knowing quite where to go, trying to hear on the radio, the newspaper, and I'm sure calling your office, the school board of education, and everybody else. Why, as parents, are we not left in the loop as to what the
Yeah.
emergency plans are, where our children are going to be sent if A, B, and C happens, so that we as families can plan for that as well?
I think those points are well taken, and I think, again, I'm going to share them with the superintendent and say, look, let's share those plans with the parents. Let them know what happens in case the worst happens. We don't want that to happen. Probably will never happen, but we want to be prepared. I think one of the things, too, is that we were definitely, things were very fluid that day. They were moving very quickly. And again, I just want to emphasize that as mayor of the city, my responsibility is for your child. And I know it's unnerving to not know where your kid is.
But it does create a safety issue for the children
Right.
when, like I said, I'm
Right.
tickled pink with how the evacuation
I
came.
got you.
But trying to get to King Street Firehouse,
Yeah.
if we had all known in advance that that's where it was gonna go,
Yeah.
so the buses didn't necessarily have to be there, or we knew if we didn't go there that we could go directly to the bus stop, maybe there wouldn't have had to be 150,000 parents trying to get to the kids
Yeah.
all at one time. And that's really where I think the communication could help out.
Good. And I'll make sure that happens before the start of next school year. We've got to let everybody have a nice summer first. We'll get back to it. Yes.
At the risk of belaboring this point, I have a question because I know that there were certain issues with the communication with the parents and the Honeywell school system. But I know that there's also, I don't know if there's separate systems, but we often get the messages from yourself, your recorded message about snow removal when there's
Right.
that kind of thing. Are those not, are those same type of messages, are they not available in a larger scope? Say it wasn't a school issue. I think another issue was when they had the issue on Haddon Road.
Yeah.
Like,
The anthrax
was is there a particular reason that couldn't have been utilized?
Well, we did utilize it in a very limited scope right around the building to evacuate people.
Okay.
There's two systems, I don't want to bore you to detail, but I'll kind of give you the big picture. There's two systems that operate. The Board of Ed operates the Honeywell system that everybody hears about. That's designed to call you in the morning and say, no school, it's snowing. I don't know how much else they use it for, if they use it to parent-teacher announcements, anything like that, but that's the system that the Board of Ed purchased several years ago. We have a different system. Our system is based on emergency management, E911. So my database, not mine, the city's database, has every phone number in the city, including unlisted numbers. And we don't have cells, but people do email in, and we add them in as we go along. So that system is used to evacuate a lost child, a snowstorm coming, God forbid some other kind of calamity that's going to happen. We use it for that, and then we also use it for community information. The Taste of Danbury is this weekend, the hours are, that kind of stuff. We try not to beat it to death. I try not to call you 500 times a week because it's obnoxious, I know that. So we try to make a judgment call about what information do you need out there, leaf pickup, stuff like that. The Honeywell system, from what everybody tells me, from the parents I've talked to, there were cutoffs, dropped kind of messages, it got about halfway through, and then it would not complete the message. It doesn't reboot, so if you pick it up halfway through, it doesn't start from the beginning and go through there again. I'm sure, and I've talked to Dr. Pascarella, I'm sure they're working on correcting some of those technical issues. Our system, I really haven't had too many of those complaints because it's a little more sophisticated, and I've even asked Dr. Sal if he wants to migrate over to our system. It seems like it's a better system, frankly. It gets the messages out quick. It can do 40,000 phone calls in about 5 minutes. And I get a printout, so I know, for example, we called around here to evacuate because of this issue. I knew who we talked to in the house. Did they pick it up live? How long were they on the phone for? And or did we drop it on the answer machine? So within about 10 minutes, I can say, go to house 8 because nobody picked up in there, no answer machine, so somebody's got to knock on the door, physically go there and see if maybe there's an elderly person, just didn't hear it or something like that. So there is some compatibility issues in terms of the two systems that we've talked about, trying to get everybody on the same page.
And not to just completely, well, actually, I guess to completely beat it to death.
Beat it to death. Beat it to death. You feel strongly about it, you came out and beat it to
It
death.
just seems to me that if you're going to evacuate the entire city of Danbury school system,
Yeah.
public, private, and parochial, of 10,000 plus students, that should get a similar priority. Oh, by the way, we're gonna pick up your leaves from your front yard.
Yeah, I agree with her.
I mean, this
That's
wasn't one
qualified.
school that was evacuated.
I understand, but
The entire city.
I can't carve out people with school-aged children, that's the problem.
If the
So
whole
if
city
if
knew
I call,
that, though.
yeah, but the problem then is you end up creating a panic. You create people that show up just to see what's going on. So you have to be very, we talked about that internally, should we notify the whole city? And we really made a decision because the Honeywell systems, the school board said, look, we've got this system, we'll call the parents and take care of that, and it works and everything else. We made a decision to use it, to use the system in a very targeted way. Because the danger is people, when you have a problem, people will end up actually going out to see the problem. Instead of staying away, they get drawn to it. We didn't want to create an undue panic that way as well. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not suggesting that leaf pickup is not as important as your child. I know. But we were really told by the BOE that they had that issue covered of being able to contact with you.
They lied.
By the way, and we have, from what I understand too, if you haven't keyed in your cell phone, do that. You can, I guess, go online and do that. I probably should probably more stuff. I don't know a lot about it, but I think you
should
can.
check the box, too, because I put my cell phone in, but I didn't check the box, so I didn't call my cell phone.
Yeah.
And I've learned now, it does actually call all 37 numbers that we have at 5 in the morning.
I use the Board of Ed's ear too.
Yep.
If you let them know also that cameras and alarms aren't enough, you actually need a person standing at the front door when the doors are unlocked and the kids are getting off the bus. Because my son gets off the bus and walks clear to the other side of the school without seeing a single adult.
Sure.
Most mornings.
Sure. That's a building issue, and look, I always told the principals, you got a responsibility to secure your building, that's what we pay you for, and if he or she, where our building is, has a problem securing the building, they need to elevate that upwards through the Board of Ed to the superintendent, but I will pass that along.
That should be a citywide policy for
Yeah.
schools.
Well, I assume it is. I mean, if you're telling me that there's nobody at the door when the child comes into the building, that's a problem.
There's nobody in the home, there's nobody in the office.
I know at the high school, because I used to work there, we used to have to wait, with 18-year-olds, wait right out front.
Mrs. Bacon has done a fabulous job
Yeah.
changing that, and there's two people, one inside the building and
That's
one
right.
outside, but there's not a soul here, not even since this whole thing happened.
I'll check into that, because that should be, other areas, do they hold the kids here before they?
What's that?
Do they hold the kids here before they let them go to, I mean, some schools, they hold them in one area with staff, and then, they.
Only if we're here before 8, but from 8 o'clock on, from 8 to 8:25, they just go.
No, I've been here at 7 in the morning, and there's kids running around, without any adults present, because I had a parent teacher something.
That's a building issue, but I will talk to the superintendent on that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm going to go back a bit, but I don't know if it's just me that doesn't know this, but I wanted to know, the day that we did have the bomb scare here, I'm a parent of a KSI students, 2 students. Was that a plan that you guys have already had, that that's what you're going to do? I know that, I don't know. Was that just spur of the moment, send them to the firehouse? But is that something that the city has always said to do, to get them to the war memorial? Or how do you think that went? And are you making a plan for something if there need be in the future?
Yeah, we have a citywide emergency operations plan that we updated, we actually wrote it in 2002 after 9/11, updated it, and I think in 2004 or 2005, Michael, somewhere at that point, and we constantly go back and revisit it. We have used the King Street Volunteer Firehouse and the Paid Department there as a refuge area.
That worked very
Right,
well.
we've done that in the past. We've used the War Memorial as a refuge area as well. We've never, ever had an all-city shutdown of schools. It's the first time when we desktop it, meaning we sort of model it in our Emergency Operations Center, but we've never actually done it. So this is the first time I can ever remember doing it. And look, it was an extraordinary step. Dr. Pasquarello was not in town at the time. Dr. Glass was here. And I said to Bill, once they found the device here, I said, I want all schools shut down immediately. And so, for public, private, parochial. First time we ever did that, again, we moved 10,000 kids in the space of about an hour and a half pretty efficiently. Did we have problems? No question about that. There are the things that we've already quarterbacked and met and gone through from the city side. One of the things that we need is a liaison right from the Board of Ed. We have to have a Board of Ed person standing right by our side. We didn't have that because the Board of Ed people were on scene. The superintendent, assistant superintendent wanted to be with the teachers and with the students, but I need somebody in our emergency operations center. So that was one of the things right off the bat that we talked to Dr. Pasquarella about was, you got to give us somebody, even if it's not a school emergency, I want a Board of Ed administrator here to liaison back and forth, because some of these issues obviously touch
Now,
us.
did that work good, or do you know that you'd do something different, like use the Danbury Powell building and split the city in half in a case like that by schools, or?
I think, you know,
You guys
depending,
talked about it
yeah,
already?
depending on the level of evacuation, we did talk about splitting up and putting kids in a different spot. And our plan really says that we should leave kids in one spot. And the reason for that is that it gets too confusing for residents, particularly if you have streets closed and particular areas of the city closed. So you're in King Street, you hear on the radio it's PAL, you race over to PAL, but no, you can't, everybody this side of the city got sent to the War Memorial. Now you're racing down the War Memorial. You can't get there because of traffic. So that's why we chose, and that's why we used the War Memorial for that. But we did have some things where we had people that were on field trips that came back late, and that they sort of didn't know what to do. So they ended up coming to the War Memorial. And like I said, by about 4:15, everybody was pretty much gone. And there was one student who went home with a friend. Kids do that. And then the mother called us. We found him. He was hanging out with his friend at his house. And another student who I think may have gotten on the wrong bus. And, you know, we got him to where he needed to be. I have to tell you, first student did a nice job. They really stepped up to the plate, and they were right there. We had to get heart buses to go up to the high school to get the staff, because it was, you know, very hot. Somebody had heart issues, and they were, excuse the pun, but they were, you know, laid on the ground, so we had to get water for them and keep them cool, and because they couldn't leave, they were stuck in a particular area. So there were a lot of moving parts to the whole thing. We had, you know, we had to close the airspace down over the city because we had, you know, Channel 8 helicopters whirring around over the head, and everybody else getting, you know, this close into the students and into the staff members. So we closed the airspace, and that takes a chain of command going up the FAA, and I had to get on the phone with them in Boston and say, we want, you know, no fly zone, if you will, over Danbury. So in general, I'm pleased about the way things work. It doesn't mean we can't improve. In particular, communication's key. You know that. And I think some great points have been brought out here about knowing the evacuation plan for your child is a great idea. So you're in the loop, and I'm going to ask the superintendent to sort of mandate that to all the elementary schools, so that everybody has that pre-opening meeting. And I think there is a parent night that you come, right?
But that's actually after
is that
school
deep into the
starts?
season? Yeah, we'll do something before school starts, and I'll talk to Dr. Pasquarella about that. It's a great idea. Rob, your hands up or you stretching?
Hands up.
Okay.
As far as the school budget goes, and this year's obviously going to be tough because there's cuts involved, but you also have class sizes increasing. What's going to be done to keep the education level moving up? And I mean, we're going to have third graders, 26, 27, 28 kids to a class next year. There's no plan to bring a fifth teacher on. What is the plan with that?
Well, we didn't cut the school budget. We gave them $5.3 million more next year than they got this year. So it's not a cut, it's an increase. It's over a 5% increase, which is pretty generous considering what's going on in other communities. And so, you know, one of the things we've got to do is we've got to work smarter. We've got to be able to maximize our efficiency on the school side. We don't do that very well. And the penalty that we pay is when those dollars are eaten at the top administrative level, they don't migrate down to the teachers in the building who really need the money, or the extra teacher that we need to reduce class size. But it's a difficult budget cycle this year, and it's going to be difficult next year as well. In terms of enrollment, you know, the perception is that, well, you know, all the schools are overcrowded. That's not really true. We have some schools that are overcrowded, other schools that are underutilized. And so what we're going to have to do next year is a targeted redistricting. In other words, I'll give you an example. Park Avenue is bursting at the seams. Mill Ridge Intermediate is about 50% full. So what we should do is take a couple of those neighborhoods that go to Park Avenue and kind of flip them over and send them over to Mill Ridge Intermediate, spin those kids off, and now we're going to have schools that are better balanced. And we'll have room at Park Avenue, we'll have room at Mill Ridge. Haystown is underutilized. Pembroke is full, same kind of thing. So you're not necessarily redistricting the whole city, because that's a disaster. Don't want to go there. Nobody's happy. People get upset that their child used to go to King Street, and now they're getting sent all the way down to, I don't know, make up another school. So we're going to try to target the redistricting to balance out the numbers. We already did that at Broadview, where we set up the STEM Academy at Rogers Park, and we had 300 applications for 110 seats in the STEM Academy. So how could we fit 110 more kids in Rogers Park? Well, because a lot of the kids that should go to Rogers Park don't, because they like to go to Broadview, so they sign up with their aunt or uncle and say that's their home address, because they want to go to Broadview, they don't want to go to Rogers Park. So by creating a new program there, now people want to go back to Rogers Park because there's going to be an outstanding program there. So that's another example of how to reduce class size without adding new teachers and costing money. So, and then you look at the big picture numbers-wise. This year we had about 50 less kids in the high school than we did last year. So there's actually less kids, although the perception is that it's big. The reality is that each year we've seen numbers drop slightly. We added the magnet school kids at our numbers, so you see like a 300 student bulge, but 240 of them, or not that many, probably 100 of them don't live in Danbury. They live in surrounding communities and come to the Danbury school. So in terms of numbers, we're pretty static, but it's where the kids are that become a problem. It's even King Street. Kids want to go to King Street School. The parents want their kids to go to King Street School. If we tried to send them to Pembroke, it'd be, they'd be very upset. So balancing the numbers in the building is important. Managing the dollars that we give the Board of Ed is critical. They've got to, frankly, do a better job at doing that. They, in my estimation, that they've got more work to do.
Is there a cap limit? I
Hey,
mean, is
generally-
there a cap for, I mean, if you're talking 28 kids,
Yeah.
does the teacher get a full-time aid? Is there a number?
Generally speaking, and our target goal is, depending on the group, high school is 25, other going down to middle school to kindergarten and elementary school, it's about 20, 22 would be maximum number. But I'll caution you, when you hear people have 26 kids, 27 kids, you really got to count who actually shows up and is in the door. And by the end of the year, and I know this because I used to teach, I'd have 28 kids on my roll, but by May, I'd have 15.
But do the
'Cause
city
it's-
make adjustments? I'm a teacher also.
No, they don't.
So does
That's
someone
right.
call it by September 20th and go, every single elementary school has X, Y, and Z numbers? Well, maybe someone should.
Rarely, they have done, I should say that, they have done that when we've had kindergarten classes where we've had 10 in one building and then we've had 20 in another. They'll try to reprogram a teacher and move them over to another building, but they're very reluctant, hesitant to do that. Or they may have 3 classes of 10 in one building. They could collapse those and have 2 15 classes and ship the other teacher to another building where there's a stress on the building. But it's very difficult to get them to think strategically that way. Actually, Dr. Glass does a nice job at that, but it's been a struggle to get people. You see it and you experience it. We used to do that a lot at the high school, but we were in the building, so it was easier.
What about addressing the root issue, which is that I've lived in Danbury for 30 years. I went out of district for 2 years to go to Broadview when we lived in Rogers Park. I did exactly what people still to this day do. My younger brother, however, did not.
Right.
What about coming down to the bottom line, which is addressing why it is that parents are so apt to want to be sending their kids to Broadview versus Rogers Park, and sort of addressing the issues at Rogers Park?
Well,
And the various
I think there's a
elements.
perception that there are issues at Rogers Park.
And perceived issues as well, yes.
Right, and the reality is that, both schools are very well run. Ed Robson runs a great school at Broadview. You can eat off the floors, it's that clean. Staff is motivated, they're hardworking. Principal Joe Klim has turned around Rogers Park. They've just added this new STEM program, which is an attempt to elevate the academics in the building, and people signed up. We got 300 kids out of Broadview that wanted to be in that program. So you can tell, so that works. When you design programming that's successful, that works. The other thing we have to look at, big picture wise, kind of go along with both your questions, is we got to look at the way we deliver educational services in general. And we've just appointed a task force, Mayor's 2020 task force, to go out and really redesign our schools, how we deliver educational services and instruction. A couple of things, to keep in mind. We operate on an agrarian calendar, right? Our schools start in August, they end in June. Why do they do that? They do that because the kids need to go in the fields and harvest all summer. Well, we don't do that anymore. Nobody harvests anymore. We ought to start thinking about building buildings and using buildings that can be used year-round. We ought to start thinking about developing year-round calendars in Connecticut. It's crazy to spend $25 million in a building and you only use it 8 months out of the year. It makes no sense economically. You also have to look at using buildings and breaking kids into smaller groups for targeted programming. So maybe we should have an Academy of Fine Arts for the high school level. Maybe we should have a STEM academy that would be in science and math at the high school level. And they don't have to meet at the high school. We can partner with Boeing or Ingelheim, or we can partner with Westcon or Danbury Hospital or any of our corporate or community partners to deliver instruction, to make sure that they can participate in the high school experience, but also break kids into smaller groups. That's what all the research tells us works. So we've got to think differently about how we deliver educational services. That's going to be painful for not the community, but in general, statewide, you know, even the time of day. All the research will tell you that high school kids do not respond to being up at 6 a.m. and being in their my first class used to be at 7, 10 in the morning. And everybody was sleeping because most of the kids had jobs at that point. They were tired. And we know that elementary kids respond to being up early in the morning. You all probably know that, right? So why do we send our high school kids at 7 a.m. We send our elementary kids at 9 a.m. Why? Because that's when the buses can run. And God forbid if the buses don't run appropriately, then the whole system crashes. So we got to start thinking about how we deliver these services and start thinking outside the box. Hopefully this committee will do that because I really want to look at new and exciting programs.
Who's going to make up this committee?
We've got people from all walks of life. We've got business folks. We've got, if you're interested, always have room for people that want to get on. We probably could use an educator. We have people from the union on there as well. And so we got to start thinking about how we do this, and city people as well. I'm sorry, your hand's been up, then I get to this. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Going along with what we're talking about, you know, I know about the task force,
Yep.
and I know the 5-year plan.
Right.
And we have to start thinking about, well, we have kids that are in middle school and
Right.
high school, and starting to think about it, it's really getting kind of late and old for us, because we've heard about this for so long.
Sure.
So are there sites in Danbury that you are looking at to incorporate these ideas? Well, I know we're not
Look,
building
yeah.
a building, which they had talked
Bill-
about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Are they looking at sites to renovate so we can address these problems now? Because I'll tell you, Broadview is completely overcrowded, and I'll use that word because it is. They're busting out of the seams, and the teachers are the ones who take the brunt, and of course it's passed down to the students. And it's not lessening up. You know, I have a 6th and 7th grader. The 5th grade class coming up is huge. The 4th grade class coming up. 3rd grade has 26, 27 kids. These issues are not
Although I've been in
going
kindergarten
away.
classes this year with 10 and 15 on the roll.
Excuse me?
I've been in kindergarten classes, at least 3 of them were there.
Right.
You also
There's
have to remember
something
they're
wrong
half
with
day.
that.
Yeah.
You know, they
So you're
should-
technically talking.
And-
Oh, they were all day.
25.
They were all day classes.
If they see this, they know, each school, they know how many kids are going to be coming into their schools. Address it now, not in August or September when you have to scramble around and say, oh, we need a new teacher, which happens here at King Street. And it
Happens
sends
everywhere.
everybody back. Thank God we got the teacher, we were very happy, but we had to work hard to get what is justified. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to look at the enrollment. Enrollment is not decreasing. And, you know, as I said, we have middle school kids in elementary schools now. I would say just keep at it now because we didn't, and we're in a situation where it is overcrowded.
Right. I mean, I will tell you, again, look at the numbers. The numbers have not increased the way you think they've increased. It's where those kids are. It's those bulges of kids, whether they're 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's large groups of kids across the board in those grades, that becomes problematic because if you got a small 2nd grade, but you got a huge 5th grade, you can't take a 2nd grade teacher and move them. It's very hard to do that. Or they're in one building and move it to another building. So part of that is we're going to have to think differently about education. Part of it's driven by money, let's be honest, and that's difficult. You know, people, particularly in these economic times, when you look across around us, every budget's going down. You know, Bethel has just went pay for play on their sports. They're, you know, we're not Bethel, but I'm just saying, you know, you start hitting that wall where people are frankly going to say, look, I'm not willing to pay for that. Even if you have kids, I'm not. So the way to do that is to figure out a way to do things efficiently and cheaper, but deliver the same services. You know, we got contract negotiations coming up with the union next year. Okay, average increase, salary increase for a teacher is 5.5% each year. I mean, that's expensive. We got healthcare benefits that cost us
That's not.
20. What's a step plus your salary? It is. It's a step plus your.
I just settled our contract, and let me tell you, we did not get that, and we went 3 years without one.
Well,
I
don't know where you teach, but I can
in
tell
New
you.
York.
I know it. Yeah, but you know what? You only got to work 25 years and you're out. Here you got 35 years, and you get Social
20
Security.
actually.
You get Social Security. Here you don't get to collect Social Security. Our health care plan is $22,000 per family. That's $22,000 to fund our health care benefit for our teachers. It's incredibly expensive. So somehow we've got to figure out a way to drive down costs, not compromise. I don't think teachers should. I think they should be paid. I'm not saying they should, but not compromise on that, But we're going to have to work together to do that. I mean, there's just no way we continue. Every year, our healthcare benefit goes up 13, 14%. Wow. So in 1999, we were spending about $6 million on benefits. This year is $15 million.
Wow.
Next year, it'll be probably 17.5, 18 million. So right off the bat, before I even look at what the taxes says, I got to find another $3.5 to $4 million just to fund the healthcare benefits for the existing teachers. Then you got to say, well, how much grant list growth, how much building do you have to generate to be able to fund that? The numbers get.
Do they pay into their health at all?
What's
Do the
that?
employees pay into
They
their
pay
health?
a premium co-share, sure.
Who's your healthcare provider?
Yeah, but they're paying 10% on a $22,000 policy. I think it's 13%.
Who's the healthcare provider?
Anthem Blue Cross? No, Cigna. It's yeah.
Didn't you just change?
Your hand was up. Go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
butting in, sorry. Didn't the healthcare company just change on the teachers halfway through the year this year?
Last year, they went from Anthem to Cigna, so instead of getting a
And they had to switch doctors. Some of them had to switch who they used and.
Right. The way the contracts read it, it has to be equal to or better than the current level of service. So you can't just go from this plan to another plan. You have to be able to present to the union, a similar plan. Now the Cigna plan is similar, and so instead of going up $5 million last year, we only went up $3 million or something like that. I mean, it's still kind of a gig. So your hands back.
Yes, I'll give you a softball here.
Yeah.
Really. So if we go back to the revenue side,
Yeah.
and you talked about the costs and the efficiencies, and we talked about
Right.
the budget and whatnot. But so, maybe I could consult. I've seen that my assessments have gone up. I went through a property tax assessment and understand the process, and probably 30 to 40% of the assessment. So, for people talk about the millages, maybe it's been adjusted yet.
Right.
But my question is, with all the puts and takes, what's the up or down percentage across Danbury of the actual property tax here?
What's the percentage
How much is it
of our
going to
total
increase in this next cycle versus last year?
for residential? The average home, about 60% of the homes who had about between a 35 and say 40% increase in their assessment will see about a 6.5 to 7% increase in their taxes
6.5 to 7%
from last year, over last year.
All right. So obviously, you talked at the beginning about, you talked about the plan of the capital here. What you didn't say, and I think you probably wanted to say, was it is going to increase. It has to increase for all the things you talked about here. People.
Well, I mean, when you look at the infrastructure of the schools, I mean, we just did an analysis of, we got to replace just about every roof, every boiler, because for years, we deferred basic maintenance. That stuff catches up to you every time. And you know what? You try replacing a roof in the middle of November. I don't know what you do for a living, sir, but you got to rush the bid. You're going to get hammered because they know you got a school where there's people getting wet, so they're going to charge you as much as they can. And so what happens is because you defer that maintenance, you end up paying anything done in an emergency is not a good way to do business. This year we started a new capital plan. We borrowed a modest amount of money, $2.5 million, to start correcting that. So we're doing boilers here. We're replacing all the boilers in this building. We're doing a new roof at Park Avenue. New roof is $476,000 for one roof. The boilers here are probably 80 or 90 or 100,000 bucks. We're doing some work at Broadview because when you turn the water fountain on, you can't get water to come out. So we're putting new pumps in. That stuff adds up really fast, and not counting bridges, roads, drainage, all the other issues that you have. And so you got to make choices and prioritize what's the worst. The way we did it this year is we took the worst of the worst. Park Avenue, I was over there in the middle of November, and there was water coming into the roof. And we chased a leak there all winter long, patching it. That one would stay, and then it would break somewhere else. So that's the worst of the worst. The boilers here are in rough shape. They haven't been replaced in 25 years. And they're more efficient, so we'll save money on fuel, but we're going to replace those. And so we're just going to, each year, click through and do the things that need to get done, because it costs you more to do it on an emergency basis. If these boilers go out, you can only imagine what it would cost us to hire somebody on a weekend to come rushing in, put a new boiler in, and you're going to pay double what you'd pay during.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware that we're doing all that. So is your plan, public or pretty transparent to see, where we're doing and where we're investing?
Yeah, we have it's a CIP, a capital improvement plan, that goes out roughly 5 years on the stuff that has to be done. It's in the back of the budget book. Everything that's double starred means it's a priority. Everything that's single starred means you can probably wait a year or two to do that. The total CIP plan is $300 million. Okay, that's roofs, boilers, basic things, and we chose to do weather-tight things first, like a roof and a boiler, because then you don't have mold issues, you don't have health issues with the staff. Once you let water come in, you end up getting mold, and you get sick building syndrome. But it's extensive. And these are tough challenges. We're going to have to, we're trying to be measured and nip at them once a year so that we don't break the bank. But it's difficult.
Thank you. Before you get too far away from what Barbara said
Yes,
about
sorry.
class sizes, I just want to go back to it, about how it's done and how the teachers just get slammed all over the place. We at King Street are losing all of our new teachers that we just got. And in this building, we got one new teacher and we're losing him, yet the school board knows that we're taking 4 second graders and they're shoving them into 3 third grade classes. And they're taking our new teacher and moving him to a 3rd grade class at a different school, leaving these parents of the 3rd graders to fight to get a new 3rd grade teacher to bring it back to the 4 classes that it presently is.
And he's moving to a school that you had just mentioned, sorry to interrupt, that is half full, Haystown, and you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit more
And
helpful, but
also
it's underutilized.
And he's
grade.
teaching 3rd grade. So we're losing a teacher that we just got,
Yeah.
that's familiar with the school. They're dumping him off to another school when they know that they're going to have overcrowded 3rd grade classes this year, but they're leaving it up to see how hard the parents are going to push and scream and yell to get another 3rd grade class. And if they're successful enough, if the squeaky wheel squeaks enough, and they get a 3rd grade class, it's not going to be his. They get another new teacher to have to come and join
And
this
also
building. And that's just not, I don't think it's fair, how they switch the teachers around. There's no familiarity. And when teachers work hard to get to this building, because King Street obvious is the creme de la creme place to work as far as teachers are
Great
concerned.
school.
It's not fair
Yeah.
to take teachers out of this building when they know darn well they're going to need them and put the onus of the responsibility onto the parents to fight to get teachers back. And if they don't fight loud enough, well, then the classes stay 26, 27 kids. And if they do fight loud enough, then you get some first-year teacher in here to teach the kids. I just don't think it's fair.
The only thing I can tell you is, we appropriate money to the Board of Ed. They make these strategic decisions. If I can make the decision, I give you a third grade class tomorrow. But I don't get to make that. I can certainly socialize this over there, and I'll talk to them about it after tonight. And again, the number is 5.3. That's $5.3 million more next year than they got this year. I like to know where it all goes.
Well, who
If somebody
watches,
can tell me,
who
I'd
watches
be
how they
pleased.
spend it then?
The Board of Ed does. That's why they're elected separately, and by state statute, we don't have the authority. Knowing what I know about the school district, I would love to have a line item view, right? I'd love to be able to take their budget and go, not doing that, yep, we need that, that's important, yep. I know what he does, he's better find something else to do, and I can manage the budget. But I don't have that luxury. I cannot direct them to spend it on certain things. I can only give them a lump sum.
Are you in charge of him?
No. He works
Who's
for
in
the-
charge of him?
The Board of Ed.
So in other words, you have nothing to say to him?
I don't hire him and I don't fire him. I mean, I can ask, and I will. I'm going to mention it to him, and along with some of these other things that were brought up.
Question, Mark. If a parent has a voice and you get nothing, and you go to administration, and then you go to the Board of Ed and you get nothing, then are you done? I mean, because there's
I
a big
can't
problem,
order- yeah,
there's a
I-
big problem at the schools,
Yeah.
communication-wise, involvement and everything, and it's glaring. If you look at KSP, KSI, it's glaring right now.
Yeah.
Parents,
Yeah, but I
parents are
can't-
shut out here, though. Where do we go? Because you obviously have a voice.
Right.
Where do we go to get that answer? Because we get shut out at the Board of Ed, we get shut out here, then we're just left hanging.
Well, I can't order them to do anything. I can take your concerns and bring them over there, which I'll do. You know, I've heard loud and clear about some issues tonight, and I'll talk to Dr. Pasquarello about that. But ultimately, he reports to the Board of Ed. You elect the Board of Ed. If you don't elect the Board of Ed, vote them out and tell them why you're voting them out, because it won't work with the mayor and some ways. No, don't say that. But you got to talk to them and let them know that you're engaged and you're watching. Look, we have a PTO that, you know, sometimes I think we can do better. We should have more engaged parents in the PTO process. We're not as active as we should be, because when I'm up putting a big number on the school budget, when I'm asking for money from the council, I need you to come to the council meeting and say, this is a good idea, and let me tell you why. Because I'm going to tell you something. This year was a battle. And all due respect to our council folks, there's some folks, not the guys, ladies and gentlemen here, 2 more joined us, there were people on that council that wanted to cut the school budget down to nothing. And I had to fight to keep it where it was.
They don't have children in the schools.
But you've got to rally every third grade parent,
Right.
get them down there to the Board of Ed meeting, and you keep going until
Right,
they
you keep
listen
going.
to you.
And you
And
tell
that's-
them,
And you harass them.
Well,
That's
and
right.
they do need to go, because I'll tell you.
in a
this.
nice way, in a nice way. You
In a
can-
nice way.
But you have to know,
You
this
advocate.
PTO fought
You advocate.
all year long with all the superintendents, assistant superintendents, and we got absolutely no place. So don't rely on the PTO to do it, you need to do it, because we got slapped in the face every time we turned around.
How many people at the PTO meetings, how many people typically come out?
10, 11, because
Okay.
they think that we're Superman and we can do it ourselves, and we can't.
In a system of 10,000 students, we get 10 parents to come to a PTO meeting. We've got to do a better job.
Because
Yeah.
nothing gets done.
We got it.
Nothing changes. It never does. They don't listen to us, they don't listen to the PTA.
Well, I listen to you guys, I'll take your stuff.
But you're not their boss.
I know.
Who wants to run for
How
some?
come they hire you for the money?
Because by
I thought you were
statute,
the
we have to
chief.
appropriate it. They write their own budget, they present it to me, and I think
Good for you.
this year they asked for about, let me just tell you how the process worked, I know you got your hand up, I get to. This year they asked for, I think it was a 7.3% increase, which is about $8.5 million more dollars than they got last year. Okay, that's just like, there's no way I can do that. Just think about what it takes to raise $8 million over what we did. That's 2 mils in your taxes, if not more. Not counting all the other expenses we have. So, in the process of talking to them, when I look closer, not only do they want the $8 million more dollars, they also wanted $3 million more for technology. High school computers are, my computer's still at the high school, I swear to God. I left in 2001. It's still there, right? So it's 8 years old that I know of, and it was like 4 years old when it was there. So the computers haven't been replaced since 1996. The switches were falling off the walls. Those are, the servers were collapsing. They didn't know if they could get report cards out for the fourth quarter. They have them ready, but they didn't know. So that really was an $11 million request. It wasn't an $8 million. We got it down to about 5.3, 5.5 by working closely and saying, look, you got to prioritize what you really need. I went and funded the computers through a bond issuance, and the technology piece through a bond issuance. But still, we can't sustain that kind of spending. It's impossible. Nobody can do it. And but on the other hand, if you've got targeted issues like a third grade teacher, you can make a difference. I'm telling you, pick up the phone and call those school board members. Tell them that you get a petition up, bring it in there, tell them you want it done. They just need to feel, the love. I guess. But let them know. Let them know that you're watching and you're concerned. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have to take this completely off the topic
Feel
for a
free.
minute because I have
Go
to
ahead.
go. What brought me here tonight is that I really feel like in Danbury there's been a major crescendo in the racism, and I know I sound like a broken record, but about a year ago, 2 local access talk show hosts were cited as basically saying the Hispanic Center should be firebombed, that the immigrants' rights supporters should be shot by snipers if they march down Main Street. And then you see all the comments on the News Times.
Don't read those comments.
And then what really brought it to more of a personal level this week, a friend of mine who's a legal permanent resident here in the United States, has been here 25 years. He's an elderly man who is looked to many as an elder teacher and a civil rights supporter, was using the computers at the public library, which he does all the time. He had a disk sitting next to the computer. He had to get up and use the restroom. He came back to his computer. The disk was gone, and there was a message on the computer that was extremely disturbing. Somebody had obviously been watching him, saw him get up, and left a message on the computer for him. And most of it was rambling. I just want to kind of read the most disturbing part of it. He said, the Panama Canal was sold so we might sell back Spain under Juan Carlos, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and perhaps the Philippines. Free tickets home to your country are provided by Lufthansa Airlines. Seek your assistance at the reservation desk, or wait to see if someone like General Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur would do what they did back then, just round you all up and march you back to your native countries. Why should we pay the expensive airfare? You are simply too much of an expense. Maybe we should do what the Germans did to the Jews and put you all in a big cell and just exterminate you. This was left on his computer at the public library. Now, this is somebody who I love very dearly. He's a wonderful man. And the thought of him sitting at this library, coming back and seeing that message, and then having to turn around and look and say, who hates me this much? Who is doing this? Who left this message for me? And not feel safe in a public municipal building because he doesn't happen to have white skin is extremely disturbing. And so my question to you, Mayor, is you are the mayor of the city. You are supposed to be setting the tone in this city. You're supposed to be showing leadership in this town. I know that you cannot control what people say. You cannot control what people think. But you can set an example. And I want to know right now, what are you doing to kind of combat this kind of environment in Danbury? What are you doing to try to address this tension in the city and try to get people to think in a halfway human tone?
Well, let me just say that that's just a horrible situation that gentleman had to go through, and it's ironic because I just had a discussion with our library director tonight about some of the people that have been hanging out in the library, because we had an event down there before I came here. But you know, the fact of the matter is, it's too bad we couldn't, you know, track down who did that. We could ban them and all that other stuff on a personal level. But you know, on the big picture level, people, you know, that are passionate about an issue on either side have got to tone it down, for lack of a better term. And here's the problem. The problem is that there's nothing racist with being concerned about the issue of illegal immigration. There's nothing racist about that.
That's right.
But, let me just finish. But the problem is, when you try to have a discussion that's up here, is that there are 20% of the people that will use that as a segue. They'll use it as a wedge to, who are racist, to start spouting raceful, hurtful things. I'm not saying that's a direct result of this. I'm just saying you see it on the News Times boards and all that other stuff. On the same token, there are people on the other side that throw around the term racist all the time. They call people racist. They don't even know them. So I think when I say we have to tone it down a little bit, I think there has to be a recognition by people on the far left that say, okay, there are 67% or 60% of people, or however many people, there are legitimate people that are concerned about this issue and think that it's a disaster, immigration policy disaster. We respect you, we agree to disagree with you, but we respect you. There are 20% of the racist people out there, and they're disgusting. That person's disgusting that did that, and they cannot participate in the conversation. You can't give them any power, you can't listen to them. I mean, you can't stop them from talking, they're going to talk, but they can't, you know, they can't, you know, let them dominate the conversation, just like you can't let the other people that run around and point the racist finger away. There's nothing more horrifying for me to have somebody call me a racist. It's horrible. It's horrible. You know, that sticks with you forever.
Unfair.
I'm going to leave being mayor sometime. I'm going to go back to high school. I don't want kids Googling my name and saying, oh, mayor, you're a racist. That's awful. You know, and that's just as stigmatizing, even to our council people who are businessmen and women and business leaders. They don't want to be called racist either.
May I interrupt you for a minute?
Let me just finish. So that has to be addressed. And on the other side, there are racist people. They're out there, and they're disgusting. And you know, when they do something racist and disgusting, they need to be called on it. And together, you know, we can accomplish a lot more of that in terms of dialogue than we can by constantly going back and forth about that. Look, Gene, you and I don't agree on this issue, but I respect you. You know that. I taught you in school. You're brilliant. But I respect that. I respect your opinion, and I let you always speak. And you know, you really do shed light on some things when you're discussing things. And sometimes we agree just to disagree, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect you. But we have to teach other people to have that same attitude, because the dialogue is frustrating. And there are racist people. There's no question.
But may I interrupt to say that what you just said seemed like you were saying this is what you can do, okay? Like you're putting the onus on the other people.
Right.
What I'm saying, I'm asking you, what are you doing in a leadership role to bridge the gaps, to create dialogue, and to kind of stand up? And I mean, I know the history of Danbury. I know your father marched in the parades when they had to do with the race riots. You know, he marched in the March to Defend Racial Unity. So I know the history of Danbury. I know your father was deeply involved in that. What are you doing to bridge that gap now in Danbury when we're seeing, because obviously this man is a legal permanent resident, he's been here 25 years, and there are many people in Danbury that have perfect status, and they're feeling the effects of the racism in that's flared up. What are you doing in your leadership role to calm that down? That's my question.
Well, let me just say that. What does the city do already? I mean, when you look at the library, for example, and the programming that we offer in the library, a lot of that is geared specifically towards folks that have just gotten here from other countries. We teach ESL at the library. We spend tens upon tens of thousands of dollars developing programs to capture everybody in that, not just people who only speak English, but the entire community. So any programs that are developed around that are good programs, and they're driven by my office. I just left a reading program. The reading program didn't say it was only for these kind of kids. It was for anybody that wanted to participate. That's how you pull the community together. You don't pull the community together by being divisive on either side. And again, I just want to emphasize, when somebody uses that kind of language, when they do that kind of action, maybe not in that forum, but in even a public forum, they need to be called out and said, you can't do that, that you're wrong, you need to apologize. You can't participate in the things that we're doing. Just like when people throw around the term racist all the time. I'm not saying you do that. I'm just saying in general, that can be equally as hurtful and offensive to people. So for my office, the best thing we can do is drive programs that bring people together, that don't separate people. And I'll certainly listen to suggestions that people have, even beyond the things that we're doing. I don't have the market cornered on good ideas. If you have one or anybody else does, shoot me an email and we'd love to participate.
Well,
the more we can bring together, people together, the better, because it breaks down barriers.
There is one time that I went to a Common Council member meeting, and a member of the community got up to the microphone and said something very similar to what was said here. Maybe not quite as harsh, but very close. He even referenced, I believe at that time, the internment camps of Japanese. And there was no strong response from your leadership role. You kind of sat there and, kind of said, oh, hey, but not really. There wasn't a strong response. Now, I don't know what your duty as mayor and as chair of a Common Council meeting is, but in those situations, it would mean a lot to people in our community if you would stand up and make a strong statement, if you would write an op-ed piece, if you would do something to say this stuff is volatile and inappropriate, and it's not acceptable.
It's toxic. Look, it's toxic. There's no question about that. And, let me just say, I don't know what incident you're sort of speaking to. Generally, we do give people latitude when they give their comments, but certainly that's not a endorsement of any comment of what anybody says up there. I mean, people say some wild stuff, not even about this issue. You go to the meetings, you kind of probably sit there and think, so it is a problem. Ma'am, your hands up.
I just wanted to say, I'm the daughter of immigrants from Italy, and I know exactly how you feel, okay? But I have to tell you, since I moved to Danbury, I've never lived in a place better in my life where there's been community, okay? I've lived in the South Bronx, okay? I come from the South, I'm a Bronx girl, okay? And living here has been the best thing for my family and my entire family. I have to tell you that. That's one isolated incident. We've gone through it where we lived. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's actually very small. The power is within you. Don't let anybody ever let you feel like you're nothing. And I also want to say I'm very proud to be a parent of King Street Primary. My daughter did phenomenal this year. I'm one of those people that was on the fence, parochial, public.
Made the right choice.
I made the right choice. I have to go. But thanks, Mayor. You're doing a phenomenal job. And thanks for fixing those potholes on West King.
Have a great summer.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just have a comment about what you said. You said, oh, Jean, don't pay attention to those letters at the News Times or on the New Times. The thing is, I do pay attention because I try to keep informed. I read not only the News Times, but I speak 3 languages. I read the Brazilian paper and the Hispanic papers because I feel like I have to be informed. And if you notice, I'm sure you read it also as part of your job.
I really try not to, I swear, I really.
The same people, and I will say racist people, because by the letters they write, it's always the same people. And what disappoints me, I am of a Brazilian background, and I go a lot to the Common Council meeting. Those people are always there, and they always step up to talk, and we know who they are. And I feel like they are very welcome there. And I think they are, my husband is American and we lived in Brazil for many years. And we worked at the American school. There was always a small group of Americans that were not happy with anything. And the good Americans called them the ugly Americans. And I never understood why they're calling them the ugly Americans. They actually look good. Now I know what they mean. And those ladies are the ugly Americans. And they're there, and that really bothers me.
Okay, but that's the kind of inflammatory language that we got to stop, Rosalie. You can't call people ugly, all right, because that just drives the debate down, and then they start calling you names back. And then
I explained to you.
We have to elevate
They use
ourselves
the
above
term
that.
ugly to
Let the
say
mayor
people
finish.
who are not happy, who upsets other people.
Right.
You know, it's not ugly.
Listen, there are, let's go back to the original comment. There are 20% out there, 20% of people out there that are racist, that are miserable, that blame the world for whatever the problem is. They exist. But there are also people, and they may not be, they're not the same people, that are legitimately concerned about an issue that's run away from this country. I mean, we don't have a coherent immigration policy. And we should be able to talk about the issue as reasonable adults who will agree on some things and disagree on other things. And shake hands and say, all right, I disagree with you, but we have to move on. We've separated from that, and that's a problem. Now, some of those folks, wherever they may be, you may never get them to the table to be an adult. Person who writes an email like that, they're not listening. You're never going to reach them, and you can't change that. But you can change the discussion amongst the 67% of people at both sides of the issue that are rational and that want to at least have a discussion. So how we do that isn't just going to be driven by me. It's got to be driven by everybody. And
I understand, but you are the head of the city, and
Sure.
if you say, look, everybody, whoever you are, this is not acceptable.
And I've done that. I've even talked to the
City Hall.
I've even talked to the News Times. I've even talked to the News Times about the comments on their comment section, that they're completely racist and inappropriate, and you shouldn't leave them there. I think they're totally wrong. I've talked to the editor, I've talked to the publisher, and said, you need, in fact, the Current just had a big thing today about how why they don't read these comments and why they don't delete them. And, I don't want to get to the technicalities of why they don't do that. The point is, I'm as deeply offended as you are, on either, both sides. If my name is mentioned, I've got 30 comments in there that say racist, 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 racist. How do you think that makes me feel? I mean, that hurts.
Yeah. Then could you come out publicly, like I said, with an op-ed, a letter to the editor, a comment somewhere, not just says what you just said, like there's 20% on either side that are irrational, but there's, reasonable people in the middle. Not just that, because you've said that 100 times.
Right.
How about saying something forceful that says this absolute racism is horrible and cannot be tolerated in this city. We're not going to take it as a city anymore. This is not the climate I want to create here.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got 3 things. Very quick.
All right.
I have a message from a teacher, a gym teacher at Broadview, who
Okay.
couldn't make it today.
Teacher of physical education.
Well, when is Broadview getting a new auditorium? I'm not even a Broadview
I
parent.
just did a
I'm
new
also
auditorium at
watching-
Broadview. We spent $10 million up there.
Well, they said that the gymnasium floor.
We got a new floor coming.
And they do, and that they've had 40 students per teacher for some gym classes this year. So that was her complaint. She wasn't very happy. I have to say, my second thing is that I went to Rogers Park orientation this year. Last time was 4 years ago. I have to say I was very impressed, so there's a good one for you. I thought that the school, and Mrs. Jopin has turned the school around. I know they've had a lot of renovations, so I'm really actually pleased, and I think that Rogers Park is just as good as Broadview, and if not better now with the STEM program. And then my third one is, we keep talking, these guys are talking about, the overcrowding of classrooms at King Street. I also have a 3rd grader here who's going to 4th grade, and they are apparently going to lose a class as well. And I was one of the parents with Barb here who was petitioning out here on the first day of school last year, and I'm prepared to do it again. And it took 5 days for them to get us another teacher last year. And I don't want to go through that again. That's what we go back to. Let's keep Mr. Hammer here. I know he's going to have a position here at some point, whether it's going to be with 3rd grade, 4th grade. We do not need to lose the teachers here. And
I will bring that over to the board.
yeah, there's going to be a position somewhere. And that's it. Thank you.
I'm not going to talk about school anymore. I'm switching gears. I got a whole new subject.
Just write down the meeting. Go
Police
ahead.
department.
Yes.
You have a very high number of police officers in the police department that are very poorly trained in domestic violence and domestic abuse. They're also a little sexist. And I think that you need to do something about cross-training the police department and have them work even maybe 1 week training either in the Women's Center or in the courthouse with the representatives for domestic violence. They are very misinformed in the field with the information that they hand out, with the way that victims are treated, with the way reports are written up, and women pay a very high price on the other end. And there are a very high number of police officers that just really don't care about it. Police officers make a lot of money. They are the one person that stands between a very bad situation when they arrive upon it. And quite frankly, a lot of times they cause more trouble when they get there than that has already gone on. And something needs to be done about the police department in regards to how they respond to domestic violence and how very, very misinformed they are regarding it.
I will bring that to the chief, and that's something I can do something about. Let me dig a little deeper into this, find a little more about this. I will tell you that in my tenure, we've hired more women police officers than ever in the history of the city. We have a lot of female officers out there. I don't know if you spotted them. In this pool of new officers that we're getting ready to certify, there are a lot of females as well. We've also ordered up training, which touches us a little bit for the fall, for every single department, every single employee, sensitivity training. We're bringing in a consultant that's going to start with the police department. She's wonderful. She does ride-along, particularly for the sexism side. She does ride-alongs with the cops. She really gets engaged with them and does a whole program designed to try to elevate a little bit of their delivery services, I guess is a good way to say it. Not trying to beat anybody down, tell them they're wrong. We're trying to get them better training and so to recognize the things they need to train. So part of what she does is that. We also have a victims advocate as well that works in the police department that specifically does.
And the victims advocate is the person who said they are very, very, very highly in need of cross-training in that department.
We'll certainly, I'm going to talk to the chief and the deputy chief, and that's certainly something that's doable, no question about that. So, absolutely. That's good points, thank you.
You're welcome.
What else? What else we got here? Anybody need a back rub? I'm just kidding. Greg Seabury, Fred Visconti, both council people are with us, as well as Louise McMahon, who's the first ward council person as well, so they've joined us also.
I just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Being we're talking about money all the time, this Hispanic Center being funded. Now, we're in the ICE program now, right?
We have been endorsed by the Boston office for participation in the program. Our application is currently in Washington, D.C. That takes a couple of month turnaround, but we expect to be accepted into the program, yes.
All right, now, conflict of interest here. This Hispanic Center, does it support or help illegal immigrants?
The Hispanic Center, helps anybody that comes to the door that needs training, that needs services that they offer. So you can't really say that they're only serving folks that are here illegally. They provide a myriad of different services. We reserve the right, I think I speak for the council, to go back and look at that issue again in terms of their funding. But one of the problems that we have is that, big picture now, we give out $1.3 million to nonprofits, and we do it with really no accountability. We don't know where the money's going. We haven't identified what services we need, what we don't need. So we're going to rework the whole grant agency process. We're going to create silos of services. So we'll need job training. We might need language skills, teaching people English. That might be one thing. Women's Center and the services they provide will be another one. Youth services, what they provide. And then we're going to fund those things at a greater level, but not fund every nonprofit in the entire city, because when people get little $5,000 grants or $10,000 grants, you're not really impacting a particular core group of people by doing it. You're not helping the bigger problems that you want to help. So we really need to identify what our needs are and then fund them and try to make our dollars count a little bit more. So the Women's Center, instead of getting $80,000, maybe we ought to be giving them $160,000 so that they can use that money for training for peace officers throughout the region, because they deal not just Danbury but through the region. And so we want to make sure that those dollars have the biggest impact. The Hispanic Center will play in that, I'm sure will play in that discussion, because they provide needed services. We fund literacy volunteers who teaches English. We fund the library. we probably spend 50 grand in library teaching English. Maybe we ought to just give the money to one organization, let them do all the English skills and all that stuff, and fund just one group and kind of pull back a little bit in other organizations. So we got to look at how we fund them. But the Hispanic Center, I'm going to tell you, does do some positive things for the community. The director, I've been very impressed with the new director. She has sort of refocused and redirected, but we still have some work to do in terms of...
That's our taxpayers' money, right?
It is, yes, sir. Their budget's about 300,000, 400,000. That's not city money. You know, I think our discussion was about $25,000. But yes.
But what percentage do you estimate the Hispanic population is in Danbury?
You know, like I say, it's a moving target. It's difficult to calculate only because there is a lot of mobility. But if you looked at the latest report, we're about 67% white non-Hispanic, about 25% Latino, and then 6% African American. And we have actually a large Asian population, but keep in mind, Asian, they categorize Indian and Pakistani folks as well. So I think we're about 12% or so. That's just how the Census Bureau does it. Not my
So
opinion.
a quarter of the population is Latino or Hispanic.
I think that's fair.
So apparently they're doing a considerable amount of work amongst the population in Danbury.
They do. You know, look, my father started funding the Hispanic Center 25 years ago. So, you know, they got off track on their mission probably 2 or 3 years ago. And once that happened, it became problematic for the council. And I didn't fund them this year because we never restored the funding last year. And so, you know, in the budget process, the council, you know, made a decision that they didn't want to fund them coming up because we're looking at, you know, retooling this whole process because there's no accountability. We're giving people money. We don't know what services they are providing, and we want to really target our dollars, particularly as the economy is shrinking, to providing the services that we need. So it's a challenge. Yes, ma'am.
The Hispanic Center, like many other nonprofits, also receives private donations.
Yes, they do.
To provide other services that the
And state
taxpayers
money.
don't fund, right?
And state money as well.
And state money.
State
Yeah.
money, too.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that'll be an ongoing discussion. Okay?
Real quick, I want to talk about the bonding.
Al, am I going to make like your greatest hits?
Real quick, real fast.
Be nice.
I'm always nice, come on. This year you bonded, we had 5 bonds that came out to be $2.5 million, which is you broke it into $500,000
Correct.
apiece. One of those bonds was for the new computer equipment at the school.
At Danbury High School, correct.
One of them. As opposed in previous years where, you know, bonds of, let's say, $2.5 million would have went to a referendum, which would have had a say on yes or no. Could we have, was there some reason why these bonds were presented the way they were in terms of like $500,000 pieces instead of, let's say, 2 $1 million bonds and 1 $500,000 bond that could have been voted on by the council?
Yeah, the reason is that our charter says that anything over $500,000 has to go to the voters.
Right.
So you can't, you have to have a single project or 2 projects that aren't connected. So for example, on the roof one, it's the easiest one. You have the roof at Park Avenue and you have the water pumps at Broadview. Total amount adds up to $500,000. 2 separate projects that don't exceed the $500,000 cap. That you can do. You couldn't lump everything together in $1 million. I mean, you could, but then you'd have to go to referendum.
Right.
Well, referendum cost about $35,000 to run, and by the time we did a referendum, it would have been the fall. So we wouldn't have had, for example, computers at Danbury High School. So we could have put it on the November ballot, but by the time we actually vote on it, go out to bid on it, and do the computers, students would have high school to the middle of the year. You probably wouldn't get report cards. And same thing for the roof at Park Avenue. You'd have a leaky roof. And I have to tell you, I think that you know, our council people, as participating in representative democracy, we shouldn't have to put a roof replacement up for a vote. I mean, I think we should constantly be looking at our infrastructure and changing it over and changing it over. Bigger projects like a police station, like a new school, like a parking garage, that should go to the voters because it's big in scope, and there has to be a community decision about doing that. In this case, and I'll just give you some background on why we did it this way. In the charter revision process, if you're following that, you notice I recommended that we spend $2.5 million. We were always under the assumption that there was an annual cap of $500,000. When we went to our bond counsel, who's been our bond counsel, our lawyer for 35 years or 30 years on this, my father appointed him in 1978, he said, and Rick Gottschalk, who had been our corporation counsel for years, said, oh, no, there's no annual cap. It's per project. And I said, well, why didn't anybody ever do it that way? Why do we run referendums for even the smallest projects? And the response to me was, well, the city had a policy of just doing $500,000 a year. So for us, this was a matter of policy. It wasn't a matter of whether you could do it or not. In fact, the bond counsel said, you certainly can if you wanted to. And that's how we opted to do it this year. I would sort of challenge people and say, look, of those projects in there, which one would you cut? I mean, you got to do a phosphorus study. You know that. The DEP is going to order us. We got the order in hand. We need computers at the high school. We need police equipment and firefighting equipment. We need a roof. So it wasn't like we were out spending money on sort of frivolous things. I mean, these are the nuts and bolts infrastructure that we need to manage the city. It's new. It's different. I understand that. Some people didn't agree with it. I respect that. I think even the council, all the council voted to fund more than $500,000, and 2 of the votes were unanimous. So I think people generally sort of didn't like it, but agreed that, yeah, you can do that. It's different. Look, there's no question about that.
Well, one more follow-up. I know with the computer equipment, because I was watching that a little bit. With the computer equipment for the school, it seems like that's one part of the phase of a master plan.
It is, yeah.
Let's just say, why couldn't they just give you the entire plan, give you the price tag for it, send it up for referendum? I can't remember the last time anything that went up for referendum didn't pass. Give us the whole bill, send it to the voters, let's vote on it, and let's just get the equipment updated. Let's not do this phase stuff. Just give us the entire bill, give it to the referendum, let the people decide, and let's vote on it.
Well, you could do that, but again, the earliest you'd have a referendum would be November. And
well,
unless you set up a special town meeting, a special referendum in January or July or May or whatever.
We had a referendum for the primary.
Yeah, but you need 60 days to notice it. So, right, you have to fit in a timeline. But yeah, you could do it before November, but you're going to spend $35,000 running a voting thing. And if it goes down, then what do? Then you got kids that don't have computers, and I don't think really that's a decision. I think it's a decision that government ought to be providing computers to kids. And I think we need to do that. And when you look around what's going on in the rest of the communities, whether it's Bethel or Brookfield, I mean, people are just voting no because they're so frustrated with the economy. And that's going to have deep impact on those school districts. And again, I think these are infrastructure nuts and bolts things that the government ought to be doing. And the council is perfectly capable of making the decision whether or not they should fund it or not. If people aren't happy with the decision the council made, or I made, we'll vote for us a year from now. The way it goes. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Well, I appreciate you coming out. Let me just say to the King Street folks, I heard you. I'm going to take this back, and we will definitely have a meeting before the beginning of September to go over these evacuation plans. I think the superintendent ought to do all elementary schools, and we'll try to bring in the parochial schools as well. I think it's a great idea, and we'll work on, I don't have a Honeywell update for you tonight, but I'll find out where they are and making sure that that system's going to work the right way. One of the things I said to the superintendent, I'm trying to beat this to death, because I know we did, but I said, look, if people hadn't entered into their cell phone numbers into the system, are we taking proactive steps to get them to do that? Because if you just have the home number, you're working during the day. You're not going to get that call. And so that's one of the things that they're going to have to do some outreach this year. And you can get text messages as well as emails too. Maybe the system send all that. So I'm going to take that stuff back. I'll try for the 3rd grade teacher or 4th grade teacher. I'll do the best I can.
Would a petition help?
Yes.
Like if we
absolutely
got a petition to keep him here and the 2nd graders.
Why do you guys say no?
They did it already.
Mr. Rollins,
Who did they give the petition to?
KSP.
to the Board of Ed.
They gave it to
It
the
got
Board of Ed?
nowhere.
They lost 2 great teachers.
It is
Yeah.
like talking
Really
to a
good
wall
teachers.
with the board.
To the
with-
same
He's a brand new
school.
teacher, and
Well,
he's
one of them
great.
to that
He's
school.
a great teacher, we want him. And he's a male teacher.
And that's
Well, he is helping kids somewhere else in the district.
But he wants to stay here.
I know. I'll tell you what.
We're losing all our male teachers.
Yeah, male teachers are a hot commodity. We need
I gotta come
male
back to teaching.
teachers.
What am I doing?
I don't even have Mr. Hammer, and I don't even know if my child will ever have it, but I feel it's important for him to stay here.
I can't promise, I have about as much pull as you guys do on this, but I'll at least raise the issue.
You're in trouble if you have as much pull as we do. You're the mayor, and we have
It
zero
doesn't work
pull.
that way in Connecticut. Superintendent runs the show.
So what should we do?
The response back on why not is, get a response back?
No, I
Well,
think we
the-
don't.
I will. If you guys, you can email me and I'll give me a couple days to work.
When's the next board meeting?
I got nothing. They're meeting I think they're meeting tonight, but I'm.
Let's go right now.
Come on, let's go.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is the STEM Academy in fact happening? Because there's a lot of mixed, and I was just told by an employee in Broadview that they didn't get enough kids signed up in Broadview. That they got
No.
The bulk of, that's not accurate. That the majority of the kids that signed up were
I
not this
heard
part,
that too.
and it may not be happening.
Oh, I
I'm
didn't
hearing that at the same time as anything
No, it's,
happening.
I talked to Dr. Pasquale 2 days ago, and he said it's happening. So, I mean, he didn't say, hey, we're not going to do it, we didn't get enough kids to bite from Broadway.
Well, the deadline was a couple days ago, so now I'm wondering if
Friday late afternoon, somebody in Broadview, because my child hasn't been signed up, you're not going to sign up.
But what they honestly could do is have the superintendent have days.
It's happening. Last I heard it was happening. I'll check on that too. I'll check on it.
Yeah, but you have no pull with the school board.
I have no drag. All right, thank you very much. I'll be here.